Okay, so guys, the session outline is just in front of you. So basically, this PPT is just kept to engage people and have the some basic idea before we actually jump onto the real demo. Because I know the folks, those who are looking for a React career or those who want to jump into the React. So they basically need to know how they can start and what will be the first step, right? So we will dig into that and we will see that how can we, look after that part. So first of all, we will talk about React, basically what is it, some core concepts, and then basically the most important thing as a part of React development, that is React components, and then some other concept related to the types of component and so on, many things. We will have the dev setup. So quickly we will go through that, and at the end we will have the app demo. That will be the core part of this session. Okay, so what is React? So basically in year 2011 somewhere, Facebook has developed, or Facebook has introduced a JavaScript library. Yes, I must to say that this is a library. It's not a full framework. Many of you may have a kind of confusion that React is a framework or not. Am I audible, guys?
Vidbhai, I can hear you. Though your voice is a bit breaking.
Nirali, can you?
Some of hello.
Yes, yes, Nirali. Am I audible? Still,
Your voice is breaking a bit.
just give me
Yeah.
just give me a moment. Hello, am I audible now, guys?
Yes, you are audible right now.
It is better.
Yeah, I think it is better. Can you guys confirm in the
Can
chat box if it's
yes,
there is
please.
still a problem?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, let's start. So basically, we were talking about that React is not a framework, but it is a front-end library which is given by the Facebook, right? You can say my slide that the current trends I have just mentioned, that it is far ahead than other frameworks and library which is available for the JavaScript, right? So you can Google it. You will be able to see that how it is better as compared to the other frameworks. Why React basically? So there are lots of things that I wanted to add here, but yes, a few important things that I have kept for your focus basically. So it's React is a declarative, is a simple, and it is a component based. So if you see component based is the most important thing, extensive, fast and easy to learn basically. Also, it supports the server side rendering also, right? Many of you know that JavaScript is basically to work on a client side only, right? But yes, now it has added feature that React will also support the server side rendering also. So that is also a plus point with working with React. React is a unidirectional data flow. Now, what basically the unidirectional data flow? Yeah, that we're gonna discuss and that we will see in the live demo also. But just for your knowledge, it will be nothing but you will see that the data flow or the communication will be done in the unidirectional way only in the React. So that is also one good feature you can say when we are working with React. It supports the JSX. What is JSX? Basically, it is again one useful feature when we are working. It makes very easy for a developer, right? When they want to write something to the browser. So that also one important feature, that's why React become very popular. And also huge community support. So basically, there will be a lots and lots of community supports you will get when you will work with React. Let's start with the core thing that we will see in the fly. So basically, JSX, as we have seen that JSX is the core feature, you can say. It is nothing but a syntax which look like an HTML and a bunch of JavaScript stuff inside that. But it is not actually then HTML. It's a template language basically that any React component will give you as output. It is not possible that we will write the output directly in form of JavaScript, which browser will understand. So here we are creating one kind of a template language called JSX, and that will be compiled by a particular compiler. You can call it's a compiler name is Babel, that's compiler JSX, and it converts into a particular JavaScript code before it reaches to the browser. So that is how it works basically under the hood. We will see how you can write the JSX, and we will also understand that how it will be useful feature when we are working with React. Now, next important thing before we jump onto anything else, you need to know that how people say that React is very fast and easy, lightweight, you can say. So the core concept is that it has the concept of virtual DOM. So basically what happened that normally this particular library doesn't interact directly with DOM. What it do is that there is a virtual DOM in between. It's a memory representation of the real DOM, and for the every update it use this virtual DOM, and it's efficiently compare it with the real DOM, and it find it out that what piece of UI element need to be rendered again. So this is how it minimize the re-rendering or minimize the efforts for changing the real DOM. So which is actually the expensive process while working with you know front end. So basically this is how virtual DOM is useful. I have written a recent blog on this virtual DOM. You can just see on the Medium platform. You will be able to know that more in detail. All right, let's go into detail with the core concept, that is component. So if you are aware that basically React is nothing but a bunch of components, or you can say your application will essentially a tree of components. For example, if you can see in this particular figure, if you see that here, every piece of thing that you can see on the UI can be considered as a one sort of component. Here is can be a header, can be a component. You can have the footer can be a component, and also you can reuse that. Similarly, like that search bar component, every piece of thing in the UI you can put it in terms of React component. You can develop it separately, right? And this piece of component can be then put together to create a complex UI like this. So this the UI may look so easy, but to handle it using React, that makes very easy for us to create a front end component. Now, most important thing, that when we are going to create a component using React, basically we will have the two type of components, that is functional and class component, right? So using React we will create the functional and class component. And simply just for your understanding, I have given the screenshot also for the basic idea that how this component will look like. Yes, these are the JavaScript function basically when we are going to create components in the React. So on the one side is a functional component, other side is a class component. Though after coming the React hook, class components are not that greatly used these days. Personally, I say since last 1 year I haven't written any new class component actually. So that's the reason functional components are very useful, and people are insist that functional components should be used. So basically difference you can say here that functional components are the stateless. We will see detail that what you mean by the stateless, and class components are the basically a stateful component. So they are considered as a smart component basically. Functional components are basically a simple JavaScript function that you can see in front of you, right? Basically a function which has the name and it will return something. What it return, that we will see. It's a shorthand method to write a component here. right? And base hook for the UI and lightweight component, you can say. Whereas in class component, you can say it has certain advantages. So basically, if you are looking for some complex logic-based component, then you should go for the class-based component, where you will have the support of lifecycle methods. It will also have the internal state, right? Though in the functional component also, after the React hook, you can have the internal state. But yeah, this is the advantage of with the class-based component. Okay. Uh, what next? Characteristics of the component, what you should write or how you should write the components, right? So that we can see basically component you can put in a nesting form. So it can possible that you can have a component inside that there may be another component, and kind of nesting you can provide, right? And that component you can use for the reusability purpose. So similarly, in the previous slide, I showed you that header component and footer component may look almost similar. So for that reason, you can create a single component and you can use for the both the reason, right? And similarly, you can create a various component that can be reused at various piece of UI here and there. It should be configurable. So basically, you can write your own of the particular component and you can use it accordingly. So particularly, let's say if you are creating a simple button component, even though in the React, so you should have the configurable title. You can have the configurable click or different methods. And similarly, many different complex UI components also you can create. You can configure as you require, and basically you can reuse it, right? So this is the core characteristics you should follow basically when creating the component. Right. So some important thing with respect to the component. So state management is the core thing. Before you won't understand the state management with the React, it will be very difficult, for you to grasp the knowledge of the React core thing. So basically here I have tried to explain you the same thing with the kind of a tree structure. This is nothing but the tree of the React component, you can say, where you will have the one component at the root as a parent, and there will be a bunch of child component. This would be a kind of a complex UI structure, React component structure, you can say. Well, basically, the state management is nothing but a way of communication and sharing the data across the component. Here we are talking about the across the component. For example, let's say there is a component A. That component want to communicate with, let's say, component K, then what to do, right? But of course, there is one more thing that I want to add here, that component itself has a state, right? And that we need to manage. Okay, so that we will talk on the fly for that. So again, so the state basically it creates the concrete data structure to represent your app state, right? That you can read and write. Since React 16 onwards, right? Every React component, whether it is functional or class, it has a state, right? Just because of the React hook, functional components are also able to handle the state of the particular component. So component have the inbuilt state object that we're gonna use as a storage of internal memory, or you can say that the internal property of any particular component. The state is encapsulate the data, where you store the data that persists between component rendering. So for example, let's say if the component A get re-rendered again and again, but still the state of that particular component, which is an internal property of this component, that will persist between different rendering also. Okay. All right, let's move ahead. There is one more thing that I just want to give you a highlight, basically because of it is something which will be difficult for any novice to understand at the first glance. But yes, state management using Redux, which is again you can say an advanced thing. But yes, for your just an introduction, I'll just give you some glimpse of that. So it is nothing but external entity, you can say, because of Redux is not part of React basically. It's a separate library. If you want to use Redux also as a set of your project, you need to install it separately and you should use that. So it has the certain feature that it will give you a central storage as a store. So you can have a store basically, which is a single piece of source of truth where you can store your all the data, and you can all your component can use that. It's a one directional data binding thing. So basically it will have a concept like a action. So basically from your regular component you will write an action. That action will tell what piece of data or what actually you want to update. So basically it is nothing but the messenger kind of thing that will forward to the reducer. Now reducer will decide that based on your request what actually you want to update in the store, right? And as we have discussed, that store is nothing but a single source of truth or a single storage, you can say, where all your data is stored, right? So Redux manage this store. So now reducer will decide what to update basically, right? And basically based on the action and based on that request, reducer will update the store, right? And that updated value will be available to your component. View is nothing but the component that we're going to use, right? So similarly, every time your view will send the request in form of action, action will goes to the reducer, and reducer will update this. Now there is one more thing that I have mentioned, that is Redux middleware. Basically, let's say before you update your store, if there is something that you need to interact from some external sources, like you want to make an API call. So for that reason, what you can do, you can have a middleware kind of mechanism here. So before you actually update the value to your store, you want to fetch some information from an API or something. So for that reason, there is a concept of Redux middleware. It is the way to intercept your all actions, right? That is departed, and basically before it get passed to the Redux store, you will find that information, you will revise that, and you will store it again. And for that reason, there are certain Redux middleware. The popular middlewares are Thunk, Saga, and many more. You can create a customized middleware for yourself, and you can use that here also, right? It is just an overview or holistic view of the Redux mechanism. But yes, you need to understand the Redux. If I go to the code base, it will take time, right? So I'll just give you a just quick glimpse of that, right? Okay, next thing, as we have discussed on the fly that from the 2000, React 16 onwards, React hooks were introduced and many things were changed, right? So React hooks is nothing but additional facility or additional feature, you can say, which is given with the functional component, and that is how functional components become so much easy to work with, right? Some more popular hooks are there, whose use state, use effect, use context, and there are additional hooks are also there, right? I'll talk about the first two or three hooks basically, because that we're going to use straight away, and basically that will be, you know, most useful hooks. Even the first of all, use state. So the class component has the state. Similarly, if you want to write the state inside your functional component, you can use the use state hook, right? Similarly, use effects is nothing but you can implement life cycle. Something important thing that you need to understand. Uh, all right, let's move ahead to set up the dev environment for the React. Basically, first of all, I must say you need to have the node, right? So you need to install the node in your machine before you start with anything else. After installing the node machine, you can write the a command like this, and basically this is a command to create a React app. Though there are other way also, but as a novice, I must say that you should use the create React app command basically. That way you can have the whole ready-made boilerplate environment basically to run with the React. So what will happen that you don't have to look around for anything else. All setup environment will be there. I'll show you by writing the same command straight away into the console, and you will be able to know that how we can do that thing. There are two options are there. You can write the first command, and without installing this create React app command, we can directly run that. Or you can use this node package manager, and you can write npm install first this React app. After that installation, you can use straight away that create React app command, and you can create the app like this. Remember that when you are working with create React app command, make sure whatever the name you are writing for your, React project, that name should be in a small case. That is what this create React app command will be, insist. So basically you should write a small case app name, right? So here, I'm going to give you a quick idea that what I'm going to give you as a demo today. So this is gonna weather app that we are going to, create today. Let's see how much time permit and how much thing we will try to cover. But yes, this is what the app that I'm going to create for you. It is just a simple diagram I have created just for your understanding, basically. So this is a screenshot I have kept for the OpenWeather API site. You can refer that site. It will after freely creating your profile, you will be able to go through this site, and there is a bunch of APIs are there. Basically, if you are creating a full-fledged application, this supports the many different things are there, but freely you can create the API over there. After creating your profile, you need to have the API key. Basically, that's required when you want to interact with your weather API. So what I'm going to do, I have already created my profile here. I have already created the API key for us so that we can use that, and we will try to fetch the current weather for a particular city. So for that reason, I'll create one small app. Basically, it will have the three component. It's for the app like this, it is not required actually to write three component, but just for your understanding and to brush up the React knowledge that we have seen in the previous slide. I'm going to create three components basically. So the app component will be a parent component, and there will be two child component. So basically we will have the live demo that how component can interact with each other. Let me tell you, I'm not going to use the Redux here. We will just simply use the proc mechanism, right? So using that, we will try to coordinate with each component. So yes, this is how we're gonna see that in the input component, we will take the input from the user. That will be city name. We will pass it to the app component, right? And then we will pass that particular component data, that city name data, and we will fetch the current temperature values. And then that particular temperatures, all the values we will pass to the container kind of component that will display the data into the onto the UI, right? So that's a simple idea, you can say. Now here, this arrow might be confusing you because of earlier we have discussed about the unidirectional data flow. And when you say unidirectional data flow, it means that data flow is supposed to be there from the uh, a kind of like a top to bottom. So for that reason, I will show you that how can you send the data back from child component to parent component as well, right? So this is part of discussion that I'll give you a live demo so that it will be more clear to you, right? And then last we will jump onto the quiz section, right? All right. So let me start my demo here. So for that reason, I'll create one new folder for you. Let's say weather, right? Let's say weather app dash app. Okay. Okay. Now inside this folder, I'll just use the VS Code as my editor. Using that, I'm going to write code for you. So simply, it has the internal terminal that I'm going to use here. Now for the simplicity, I will just straight away, I'm going to write the command here, that is npx, then create React app. Now basically we want to install this React inside the same folder. So I don't have to write the name again, that is weather app or anything like that. I'll just simply write it down, dash a dot and slash. Basically it will install the React in the same folder, and we can use that, right? And you can simply enter, and basically it will install the React for us. Now it will take a moment, actually 1 or 2, maybe 3 or 4 minutes actually. So to save our time, I have already created a similar, you can say a similar kind of uh, directory for us, and basically we can use that. So it will save our time particularly. Okay, so this is nothing but the React app that we're gonna create. All right, so just have a quick look at this particular screen. Okay, now in front of you, I have created a similar uh, React application. So basically it is weather demo. Inside that I have installed the initial create React library, right? So you can see this is the data React directory structure. There will be bunch of files are there. This when you will install with React using this particular mechanism, you will be able to all this kind of files just in front of you. So let me run this app. To run the React app, after installation, you can directly write this npm start command and it will start the server. There is an inbuilt server available and that will no, you don't have to install it straight away. It will run for you straight away, right? So it will run on a local host basically, and you can able to see your server. So basically, if you run your React first time, and you will be able to see that this is how your React will be look like at the first glance, right? We haven't written any single line of code here. You can see that, but still you are able to run your particular React, right? Okay, so yes, I have just split the screen for simplicity and for the better visibility. If this font is not visible to you, let me just increase the font size so that it will be more clear. This is the directory structure I was talking about. So what I'm going to do for us, I will simply delete all the file and we will create a whole bunch of new files here, right? So that we will have the basically clear idea that what we're gonna do then, right? Okay. One more thing before I actually start, let me stop my application at the moment because of there is one more library required at the end. So and that library is Axios. So I need to install that first. Npm install, then save, and the library name is Axios. Now basically if you have a bunch of more libraries, you can simply write over here and you can install that. So I'll simply install that library, right? And parallelly I'll create some bunch of files for us. So let's say first will be uh, we need index.js, right? And what we need in that file, that is we need to have the import. We have to import the React first, then we will import the React DOM. These are the two basic libraries that we're going to use here. And now uh, let me make it capital. Is a method called render. Basically it takes the two argument. First argument, that is the root app, you can say, or a parent node, you can say, which we're gonna develop very soon. And the second argument is the particular location where you will render. Now see the beauty of the React app. Here there is a index.html file. Inside the file, let me just give you some more space so that it will be visible. Here you will see that in this HTML file we have nothing actually except this particular div which has the ID root. So what we're gonna do, that when this app will run, so it will load everything inside this particular root ID, root div, right? And that is how we're gonna work here. So that ID we will provide here. So for that reason, document dot query selector, document dot, and we will provide the particular ID, right? Root, you can also write document dot get element by ID, right? And you can do that. Okay, let me run the app here and we start. Okay, so now let's create first of all our app. The first, you can say, a component. that is app.js. Now, as a best practice, it is required that you should write the component name with the capital letter, right? So that is the basically you can easily understand. Now I'm going to use some extension that is available with the Visual Studio Visual Code, right? And in the VS Code there is a React snippets are there, so that we can save some of the time and we can directly create a React component on the fly like this. So this is nothing but the easiest way to create a functional component. It has written all the required boilerplate for me. I'll just simply save this and I will move to this particular component. I need to import this, right? Because if I have written that particular app component in the separate file, I have to import it from the app, right? When you are writing import, no need to write the extension. It will be easy for us to understand. Okay, now if it is visible to you, this app which have written the term here, that is visible here. So you can able to see that, right? Now another important thing before we actually move on, uh, I have created some uh, predefined, or you can say that uh, pre-written some assets for us, and I'll just simply copy paste that asset right into our application. It was weather demo, right? So here I'll simply add that assets. This assets, let me show you in the directory so that it will be easy for you to understand. Okay, so that assets that I have added, this is nothing but some images that I'm going to use, API keys that we will use it later stage, and some style. So basically I want to use the style at the moment. So I'll add the style also. To import the style which is I have created in a CSS file, you can write like this, right? In the asset folder, and then we have .css. Now let me save it, and if it is get uh, import it straight away, you will be able to see that font size and font type is changed straight away, right? So these are the command that I have written inside that app folder, that CSS file. So accordingly, it will take the details. So to save our time, I have just created the CSS on the fly so that we can use at the later stage. Okay, let's move ahead. This is first basic setup is done. Now at the next stage, what I'm going to do, I'll create one particular folder. Let me say component. This is not required at this level, but yes, for your better understanding, I am doing this to creating a folder and a nice data structure. Now I'm going to create input.js, a component which we have to use to take the user input, and another one that is container. JS, right? So this is the two basically file that I have created. Similarly, here also I'll use the React snippet, that is RFC. If you type RCC, it will create the class component for you. Just for your understanding, this is the way you can use the class component. For the simplicity, I'm not going in detail with that at the moment. We'll use the class component here for input. Similarly, let me create for container and the container. Both the components are created. I'll first of all import the input component, and we can do that in this way also, that we can directly write. Now this is nothing but the example of JSX you can see. So that div is nothing but the HTML tag, but here we can add the React component as well. So if I you can see that import statement is automatically added, and the import statement will be just like this, and the input component is added. Similarly, I want one more component, that is uh, and basically I will add that. Similarly, both the components are added. You can see that when I'm just saving this file, you will be able to see the live output similarly on the other side, right? So now we will go to the input file, and in the input file, what we're gonna do is that we will create one text box, right? For that reason, input, and then type will be text. At the placeholder, let's say city name. Let me just close this at the moment, and we can see this is a tiny kind of text box is created with the city name. We can some type the value here. Now we will uh, control this particular component, this particular element, and for that reason we need to have the state. So basically what I'm going to do, whatever the city name user will enter, we should access the city name in the app component. So as per the concept, this is then unidirectional. So whatever the data that you're going to use, that should pass into the input component using props, right? But here I'm going to create the state for us. So const syntax may look weird to you at the first glance, but let me tell you, this is very easy once you are used to with this. Okay, let me to tell you the details about this. This is the first example of create hooks. This is the use state hook. This parenthesis is the null, you can say an empty string that I want to set for as a default initial value for my city variable. Right now, understand two things. This is the state variable, right, that we are going to use, and this is the method to update this state variable. Now, the concept is a little bit different in component, but we will discuss time. But in the functional component, this is how you can create a state of your component, and this is how you can manage. So at any point of time, this city value get changed, this component will get re-rendered. Now, what I'm going to do here, we will pass this value into the input component. So how to pass that? So when you want to pass any value, you can use the syntax. This will be the name will be referred into the input component, and this is the value that we're going to fetch from the current component. So this city value will be accessed by the city name inside the input component. And here there is a prop, right, that we can use to access that. Just simply, I'll just destructure that. This is an ES6 feature in the JavaScript. This is how we can destructure any variable. And basically, whatever the state value which we are going to get, I'm just appending to this particular input component. Similarly, I want this set method, because of actually we're gonna change the value of the city inside the text box, right? And it is there in the input component. So I'll just pass this two methods. I want this destructuring with the set city method. What I'm going to do, how this input will change. So there is a event that is on change event. Basically, it will have the it will run this method. Now this is an arrow method. Many of you might not aware. This is the way we can write the function in ES6, or you can say a modern JavaScript, right? So e dot target dot value. Basically, it will give me the current value of the city, whatever you will type here, and it will update the city value. And basically, we will directly reach that city value inside this, right? So this is how we do this. Now, after updating the city value, the city value will be available here, okay, and that we can access straight away. Now, what next we want to do? Before we move on, let me add some styling and some components here so that it will, look good to you at the first glance. So I have created certain CSS for us that I'm going to use straight away. Now, what is class name? Basically, class is the term used in the JavaScript to create the class components, right? So for that reason, this particular class that we are using, right, to create the CSS at class selector, right? So for that reason, it is written as class name, right? So the CSS library is CSS that I have written here. I have written this particular CSS. Let me show you quickly what I'm talking about basically. So inside the CSS, I have created different bunch of kind of class holders. So basically, you will be able to load appropriate, backgrounds and all the kind of stuff. So this CSS is already written. I'm just using that for your reference, right? So make it simple for you. Now I'll add certain div class names here also, so that straight away we will be able to access that. I will provide this particular uh, Git link for you so that you can have this code straight away for your access, and you can use that search box. Inside that I have created search. You can see that this is now this is a responsive site. You can easy to load any screen site. Okay, let's get back to the work. So this particular input command controller is almost ready. One last thing that I want to do is that whenever user entered the city value, so what will happen that when user will enter the city value and when they press enter, at that time I want to write an API, write an API call so that we will be able to access that. And for that reason, I'll write one more method here. Let's say const, right? And let's say handle on key press. You will understand very soon what I'm trying to do here. Let me just write this method. This is again a method that I'm going to use, right, inside this input component. You can see that I'm passing the methods also, right, here as a parameter. So this is the beauty of React. Now I will create one more method here. Let me say on key press. This is the event that we're gonna access. So we will have that when user will press the key, right? At that time we will run this method. Okay, on key press. Now inside this I will write this on key press method, and basically it will take a key as an argument, and if this key value, right, is entered, if user has entered this key, then and only then we will run this method. Okay, so when user will press entered inside this text box, at that time only the user should know that we have completed city name and we want to do something, right? So here what we're going to do, we will make an API call, right? What is that? So for that, let me bring the API details. I'm not going to the OpenWeather site to give you this detail at the moment, but yes, I have already fetched added get this. So here exhaust.get is the method because of we want to make a get call. I'm going to use template string, one another modern JavaScript feature you can say, and here we're gonna write, let's say get dot base URL. It also need one query string, and that will be a city name. So I'll write like this. It will be city, right? And it need one more argument, that is app ID. Okay. Then we have that app ID with us inside this API dot key, and it take one more last one, which is not mandatory actually, that is units, in which unit we want the data. So we want in the metric unit. Save this. Now when you will make a network call like this using Axios, it will return us promises, and in JavaScript we handle the promises with the many different way, but I'll use the classical one, that is dot then and dot catch method. I will just simply put if condition, if this return the status of our call is successful with the 200, right? Then what we will do, we will just console it for now, log race.data. This I'll directly write the catch for you, and I'll make it simple at the moment. I'll just console if there is any error, don't write sorry. Okay. Console.log. I'll just write for your simplicity, your understanding. I'm not going in detail currently at the moment to control all this thing, but yeah, this is the easiest way to do this. We will have the console log. We have set up everything. Let's type here. Let me open the console as well, so you can able to see that. Okay. So what we will write here, let's say Pune. You can see our console is ready with the bunch of data. This is nothing but the current temperature value that we have fetched, and it's showing the different data actually. But here, temperature value, if you can see, this is the temperature value that I just want to access. It has many details actually, visibility, weather, wind, cloud details, and many more things are there, right? Sunrise, sunset time, and so on. Mean, max, humidity, pressure. So whatever you want to access, you can straight away use that, right? So that we're going to use here. Okay, now to pass this data to at next level, that is to the container class, container component. I'm just going to create one more data object, let's say temp, and it can have the set temp. Let me add this temp data, not temp actually, because we will create an object here. Data. All right. It dot use state, and I'll create an empty object like this. So I'll pick some of the value from this. No need to have a console here. Let's change set temp data, add some values. So I'll add the temp. It is there in the race dot main dot temp. Right. We have from the city object, city state variable, but I'll copy that in this variable so that using same object we can copy this. Also, I need one more thing, that is I want a country name so that we can display, and that is there in the rest data.sys dot see here in the console still it is open. So this country name, here from the main, this temperature value that I'm going to access simply in this object. Now let's save it, close the console. I'll pass this value to the container component. We haven't touched that component at the moment. So again, I'm sending this temp data to this component. So when this data will be available, this component get re-rendered and our container component will have the latest values of that. Okay, so let me write, or we will destructure the props here, and we will write temp data. We will use that. Inside this div, I'll create some more divs, one for city value. So like I will add the temp data dot temp. This will prompt us a temperature. Under the need, I will load the city name as well as the country. So for that reason, temp data dot temp. So comma, we can have the temp data dot tree. Okay, that we're gonna display. For now, we don't have anything at the moment. I'll add some CSS classes here also, so that this is a temp container. Okay, so we can show it properly. And this is the class name. These all CSS properties are already created, so no need to worry at the moment. Your time, let me say city. All right, so let me type, let's say Pune. You can see the temperature values are there in front of you. One last thing that I will add here, that is and hash, nothing but a character entity for showing the Celsius, data, the result. So this is how we can, display the value user, and user can access on the fly the temperature. You can have the temperature of a different city, and basically on the fly it will update it. The font and everything I have set, as you can say, as a responsive one, so it has the nice feel and look on your screen whenever you are creating this, right? One last thing that I want to add here, that I will change the background of the particular uh, app based on the temperature value. So let's say if the temp data, right, dot temp value is greater than 0, then we will use this particular class. Else we'll have another class called app code that I have already created, and this is nothing but the nice way, right? You can render. All right, I have added the wrong. So you can see here, this is a ternary operator I have used to simply conditionally render the particular class in the div. So this is the beauty of CSS. JSX, you can say. This is nothing but only HTML, but bunch of HTML with a JavaScript as well. So this is how it works. So if it is the temperature below 0 degree, it will load something like that. Or if you have the temperature above 0 value, it will load like this, right? So yeah, this is the way we can, easily render this. One last thing that I want to add, that let's say at the initial stage, if there is no value, I just don't want to display this container. So I can put this thing in a very simple way. To do that, let me add a const and temp container, and I will add all the CSS code here. Additionally, render this. Again, use the ternary operator, right? And if temp data or temp, right, if this value is there, then we will render this. Either we will render null value. Let me just put this one in between. All right. So I'll add the temp container at the last. Okay. So now when you will load, it will be look like this. If you enter any city value, you will have the city value accordingly, right? And if you enter some, if you can see that by then that value will be there. We can have some more cornerstone particular cases, that if you delete the city value, this particular container should change or like that. But I'm not going in that detail at the moment. But yeah, this is the way you can create a small React app. You can see that you can update the value on the fly and this is fetching the real-time temperature value for any city. Okay, so yeah, this is the small demo for us. Nirali, if you can set up a quiz now, so we can good to go with the quiz. Nirali?